everyone, it's Will, Gamer Dad, with another video for you. So this is chapter 83 and we are finally exploring the Mark of God's tomb. And I do apologize for the long video. Chapter 83 was extremely long and fairly difficult. There's quite a few tough end game bosses at the end of chapter 83, and it actually blends into chapter 84. So I'll have the very final boss fight separated into chapter 84 just for ease of accessing, since this video is extremely long. Now, first off, when you are challenging 83, you'll be forced to choose two different teams, very similar to the KMS back in chapter 72 or 73, something along those lines. And so if you remember that, Aldo leads a team, Amy leads a team. And so I will show you later on in this video. You can see the teams I'm bringing. Being that Aldo's already a fire slash, you're really trying to balance out your team, have at least one healer, for example, one magic user, perhaps one of a different element, and so that way you can really support your teams and have complementary styles. I would say that Aldo's more than capable of handling himself on his own, as long as you bring a couple of other units. Amy's a little bit weaker, and so even with the recent upgrades, I would probably recommend supporting her a little bit more. So you can see that we have Wind Slash as well as Clark as a healer, and on Amy's side we have AS Myris and Gary to blast things away. Now, in terms of the puzzles here, I didn't find any super secret paths. Pretty straightforward. Basically, you go as far as you can with the one team, try to find everything, and then use the switch teams button in the menu on the bottom hand left in order to switch backwards. And I did try to show each cutscene so you can kind of see how I progressed through this particular chapter. In terms of the mobs, like I said, all fairly tough, high 80s to 90s, and again, there are horrors as well. If you want to try to skip them, you can, but however, you will probably need the farming materials, so I would still try to recommend being to beat them down. So again, definitely highly recommend a mixed team with both some magical as well as opposite elemental attacks. Some enemies actually absorb magic, so bear that in mind as well. Although, like I said, Clark AS did serve me very well for the majority of these chapters. Anyways, moving forward, after you explore all of this, as you get reunited with the two parties, that is, once you've gotten far enough in this particular chapter, Amy's party and Aldo's party join back, in which case you'll be able to proceed further. And there are quite a few interactions here with Aldo, as well as his journey with Fene to save Eden. So you have some interactions between Eden as well as the two of them, being that they're the most, I guess, close blood-wise to Eden in order to save him. And so there's a lot of awesome storyline both in this chapter as well as chapter 84. So hopefully you have enjoyed it. If you have already played it, if you haven't, you can watch through some of this and maybe learn a little bit more. It actually was really difficult to kind of remember some of the details through both of these chapters, so hopefully some of them do get jogged in your memory as you challenge further into this final series of bosses. So for chapter 83, I would consider this two bosses, and then chapter 84 would be one boss. And actually, if you do it back, do it as it's meant to be, you're actually challenging all three bosses back to back to back with no rest, no heal, and no switching of teams. However, if you do not die between boss 1 or boss 2 or boss 3, you can actually restart at that phase and switch teams. And so I actually did that for chapter 84, which is the very final boss. The first two boss forms were already pretty difficult, so don't underestimate that, and definitely fast forward to the boss section if you want to see my strategies for taking on these more difficult end game fights. Like most storyline videos, I'm going to stop talking now and let you watch the rest of the video in peace. Thanks for watching. We'll see you next time.
あの子に顔向けできないな。
Hey everyone, it's Will, Gamer Dad, and welcome back to the boss fight section of Chapter 83. I decided to bring the main characters, just to see the level of difficulty required, and actually I was not prepared for the level of difficulty to fight these. So do not bring an underpowered team like I did. I would highly recommend bringing either an all magic team or a zone team, especially a weapon type team, blunt, sword, pierce. I'm sure all of them will be fine. You'll definitely need a healer, dual debuffer, shield if you can, and of course 1 or 2 DPS. You can see that right off the bat, the boss actually does like a 99% drain, and then it just kind of does a few AoEs over and over again. I don't think the first form had any HP stoppers. However, note that it actually has 2 bars of HP, not just 1. And so I didn't want to use my AF bar here. I wasn't really sure what I'm up against since I didn't read up on any guides before taking this on. Otherwise, with my weaker team, I used Aldo, and bear in mind that in Chapter 83, he does get boosted quite a bit, and his moves are now based on light. And so I do have a 255 light Aldo, and so we are using a fair bit of damage, and obviously we use Calamity to prevent any further destruction, to our team. Fenny is only a 5-star, but it's very weak, so you don't see a lot of benefit using her on the team. Although I'm sure at level 80, I will do a 5-star review and show you what she's all about. Otherwise, it's just wearing down the first form here. You can see with some mitigation, not nearly as deadly, although there are some status there. You can see the darkness, which obviously affects your physical attacks. Alright, so just... there you go. So again, stun and so on and so forth. So the whole problem with these fights is that, remember that they're back to back to back. And so as you fight through one fight, you will have no way to recover. And you can see that clearly ended our team. Not actually really sure why Clark survived here with no HP death, whereas I guess Gilna clearly died there. So I'll have to probably replay this and kind of see why I died. Anyways, I recovered some MP, moved Aldo back front, and with a much weaker party than I should have, I was able to defeat the first form. Alright, so I'm going to cut out here and stop talking, and we can see you at the second fight where I'll be discussing some of my strategies at that time. Thanks for watching, and we'll see you later on in this video for the third time. Okay, well, welcome back. And this is part 3 of the voicing of chapter 83, and this is the second boss that you will fight in a row. Like I had mentioned earlier on, you don't get to recover from the first one to the second fight. And so bringing the appropriate team is really important. Again, if you do die on the second one, you can just change your team and you can restart that fight. So hopefully that will be a little bit of solace for those who kind of took a beating with this particular one. I was not expecting, like I said, this level of difficulty. And to make things worse, not only could you lose your, team very easily, it actually has some phases where it basically puts up a 5-turn shield, which you'll definitely see a little bit later on. And it has a multitude of attacks. It doesn't establish any zone though. So if you keep some, dual debuff on, you should be able to deal a decent amount of damage to it. And note that we hit our first HP stopper, which is around the 30% mark. Didn't take too much damage there. And it's that barrier. And so you need to survive for 5 turns here. And the whole problem is you can't deal any damage. So you have to recover MP and HP in the back and basically use a unit to kind of tank or stall tactics for 5 turns. There's no way, from my understanding, to get around this particular 5-turn stall. And so, just make sure you have a healer up front, or maybe VC in someone that can heal or prevent or take damage. And again, make sure you have a debuffer here. We have distortion that lasts for 2 turns, not nearly as effective as someone who can dual debuff or type shield for 3 turns. However, at this stage, this is still decent enough to fight this particular boss as is. Alright, so you can see I'm just rotating back and forth, and it just hits you with multiple magic attacks and physical attacks. So certainly not a fun fight. In terms of how I feel this difficulty level is versus something like Suzaku or something like that, it really depends on your team and what you brought. So I did interview my 3 different children, and 2 of them brought a magic team and 1 brought an all-slash team with AS Billalili as well as AS Miyu, and they didn't have too much problems here, and I can definitely understand why. Meanwhile, I'm taking 25% damage from that gravity type attack and losing MP left, right, and center. So again, you can still see that there's a null. As long as there's null, you can't do anything, and you can see that's just repeating 25% kind of HP drain. And finally, Riftbreaker's cannon has gotten back online, and we are able to continue dealing damage to it. So that's only right after the HP stopper. Like I said, you have 5 turns to just kind of do your thing and hopefully recover. Note, in my team, Fene 5-star is only at level 60 something and not nearly stacked up enough. But you can see that with the like a Calamity from Gilna with 3 stacks, as well as Aldo, and he is a maxed 255 light. Like I said, he actually does have one of the newest weapons from some of the super bosses called the Void Bow, which guarantees crit. And it has another shield here. And again, have to stall a little bit longer, so you can see that nothing's happening, and we'll just have to repeat the same kind of thing for 5 more turns. And so this fight is actually one of the longer fights in the game because there's no way to overpower it. I'm not sure if Tiramisu can actually punch through this, so if you did use Tiramisu or walk around with this fight, let me know in the comments below if you're able to bypass this shield. You can see the gravity attack is a little bit more powerful than last time. Instead of 25%, it is 50%, and it also applies status. So note that I'm not able to rotate out, and this is where things get really dicey and interesting. If you can't rotate it out, basically in 2 turns your team is dead, no matter what, because it's 50% and there's no prevention of that. I believe this is fixed damage, and even mitigation with shields or anything like that debuffs won't do anything. And you can clearly see I did that, and it's 50%, 50%, and so 2 units are gone. And finally, we were able to barely survive. Main cannon dropped the shield for the last time, and it's got a little sliver of life. So again, that's an HP stopper, the second one of the fight. I estimate the fight to have about 10 or 15% left in terms of HP, although I can't be 100% sure. And then let's just hopefully try to win with our so-called B team. his men has actually only got the apprentice weapons on to level her up. Again, I wasn't expecting a super fight, although I should have, being that this is basically the second last chapter of the game. So that's my own fault for dragging on this fight. And so again, don't make this mistake I did and cause yourself some pain. There was definitely a lot of pain here. And however, we should barely survive. Alright, so again, now that the fight's over, you can watch the long sequence of story and then hopefully tune back for my video on chapter 84. Thanks for watching. We'll see you next time.